You're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Shane Darby. This is the final instalment of our Spring Break Series 2024, which is predominantly focused on County Sligo Golf Club as it celebrates its 130 years of existence throughout the year 2024. David Dunne is today's guest, a former Irish international golfer, Rosses Point native via the Midlands of Ireland, former banker turned restaurateur. The members at County Sligo Golf Club recently approved a Mackenzie and Ebert plan to reconnect with their Colt & Co design heritage. David has and is to play an important role as the council's main liaison with Martin Ebert, Tom Mackenzie and the project team. Throughout the course of the episode, we chat about his background and then delve into the machinations of the history of this project and what's to come as a grand old dame of Irish golf clears her throat and goes back to the future in search of interest, fun, playability, maintainability and challenge. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you find the show enjoyable. Okay, so David Dunne, you're very welcome to the Firm and Fast Golf Podcast. How's all in Sligo?
All is good, Shane. Yeah, really good. Course is in fantastic shape at the moment, and yeah, it's exciting times down in Rosses Point.
Absolutely, you're a Rosses native, yeah?
I am, yeah, born and bred. Well, not quite born. I was born in the Midlands, but my parents relocated to Rosses Point when I was a few months old, and yeah, I lived all my childhood life in Rosses Point, and most of my all my summers in the golf club. So it's been a great place to live, and it was fantastic for the golf as well.
Well, I guess we will get on to your a little bit of your backstory, but obviously predominantly you're here as the and forgive me if I butcher this, but I believe you're the club committee or council's liaison on the Master Planning and Development Project in conjunction with the work that County Sligo has just approved, or the members have just approved with Mackenzie and Ebert.
It's a bit of a mouthful there, Shane, yeah, but that is, yeah, essentially the role that I play. We recently changed our kind of structure in the club and dispensed with having a links convener. And we kind of went for a strategy of the course manager, the general manager, and the club professional being part of the executive and essentially running that aspect, and try and reduce the I suppose the input from a links convener, so to speak. So I sit on the links committee, but we don't have a links convener. We're just trying it out to see if it works.
And is that role that you've undertaken, is that a long-term role in terms of continuity? Do you see that sort of, I mean, I believe the plan, certainly from what I've read and talking to you last week, it's a 5-6 year plan minimum. Do you see, yeah. Sorry, is it envisaged that you will be there for the duration?
I would hope so. You know, I think from our club's structure point of view, you're only allowed a 4-year term on the management council. So I'll have 1 more year on that, and then there'll be some way in which I'll continue in that role. Maybe somebody else would report into management council, but we'll find a way. It would be, I would like to see it through, essentially. Okay. It's such an exciting project. I wouldn't want, it'd be a difficult one to be handed over to somebody else, and I wouldn't really want to do that.
So some form of, and this is a joke, David, so don't take it as it's meant, benevolent dictatorship of some description.
Yeah.
You'll wear that as long as the benevolent dictator is the right benevolent dictator.
I'll wear it. I'll wear that. Yeah.
Well, listen. Before we get cracking into the specifics of your experience with the process thus far, I'm just interested to understand, as a Rosses Point native and somebody that clearly has a great graw and a love for the County Sligo Golf Club. What's your earliest golfing memory?
I suppose my earliest memory would be playing, the first three holes with my dad and my older brother. So my dad was heavily involved in the golf club, would have held every position possible. Um, my brother was a few years older than me, so you're always trying to beat your older brother. And it was at a time when, dad would bring me out at 7 years of age or whatever. And, when you were big enough to hold a few clubs, you could play the first three holes and be happy with yourself and go in with a pint of my Waddy Orange afterwards. And, that was what, my earliest memories would be, because, and they were great memories to have. I grew up in Ross's Point. My best friends in life still are probably those guys that I played golf with in my early days. And Ross's Point is a kind of on a peninsula, and it's unusual in parts of Ireland. Gaelic or hurling in kind of rural communities can be the main sport, but for us in Ross's Point, golf was the main sport, and we were always very lucky that we had kind of guys to look up to, guys who had played for Ireland, the guys who were a couple of years older than you, and we just had a fantastic group. I have kids now, and they're just pulled into different sports all the time. It's so hard. But back in early '80s or whatever, you didn't have those many distractions. There was no Xboxes or anything, and you just spent your days on the golf course. They were just fantastic days.
So I guess looking back, obviously, in terms of your time at County Sligo, how would you characterise what the golf club means to you?
It kind of it just means nearly everything to me, because my younger years, I spent all my time there, up to 18 years of age. I then, you go away, you start work, I went to Dublin for a while, and then the lure was always to come back. And then you appreciate more and more, particularly when you spend a little bit of time away, how much it means to you. And I came back, and now as I get older, you get involved in management council and the running of it, and you start appreciating more about the golf course, the history of the golf course. Like when you're young, you don't even think about any of these things. All you want to do is shoot a score. So it just means everything. I'd probably be up in the golf club most days in the week. Even if it's to do anything. It's just it's part of your everyday. My dad was. I think that comes from my dad. My dad was involved in the club so much, and he passed a few years ago. And I remember, somebody, all the members coming up to me and saying all these things that Dad had done, and it does feel with me that I should carry on, the name in terms of, volunteering for some of these committees, and sometimes you kind of wonder, why am I doing these things? But it's just part of our makeup, really.
Great. I mean, it is that custodianship element in terms of trying to pass it on, I suppose, in at least as good of a state as you got it, but hopefully improve it. And I guess very much in terms of the course, which is in any golfing facility, it has to be the number one asset, because without the course, you're not a golf club. And that's very much how I feel, hopefully, in relation to Royal Dublin and getting involved there. But we're now a week removed from my last round at Ross's, which was probably round 4 or 5 ever. In advance of the trip, I had actually forgotten how good the place is, and you'd be very glad to hear that I'm smitten once again. I've thought about it more than I'd expected to, and really can't wait to get back. But look, let's take a look at, you obviously moved on from playing the first 3 holes at Ross's, and from a formative and representative golf career, I believe you were an Irish international from the age of 16 to 23. You travelled extensively, I would imagine, during that time. I'm just wondering, has your taste or preference for course design and even your view of golf changed since those early days?
Yeah, I think in those early days, I was lucky enough to play for Ireland. We played over in Scotland and England quite a bit, and represented the Irish universities. We played in Switzerland and Madrid, and you get see these places, but I think when you're young, you're just so focused on golf. I don't really think, I didn't think much of, you know, the architecture or where the golf course was, how it was built, or any of that kind of stuff when I was younger. And then over the years, you know, I was lucky enough to play, you know, some of the greats over in Scotland and Muirfield, you know, Turnberry, Carnoustie, all those places, lucky enough to play. The Lytham Trophy, you know, all I was doing was trying to avoid the bunkers. You know, I'm trying to break 80, you know, it's like, so
Did you manage to do that?
I wasn't really thinking about the architecture that day.
Sure.
The British Amateur, the amateur was in Royal County Down, and I played in that as well, and that was so difficult. You know, it was running hard, fast, and I found it like so. You know, some of these golf courses when they play in the way they're supposed to be played are just phenomenal tests. So, I think, you know, having that experience and having played on the senior team and it's all great fun. It's just, you just want to keep on representing your country when these things happen. So it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're in the golf office there, and you have plenty of pictures on the wall behind you. And I did notice the pics in the clubhouse. 8 national titles with County Sligo Golf Club. It's safe to say you had a pretty good team, so.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it was a fantastic time, and it kind of all started around 1995 for us. Ken Carney, who was an Irish international, he had briefly turned professional, and he moved back to Sligo to work in Sligo. And he came to the club, and he is to this day the best iron player I've ever played with, and one of the top amateur golfers in our day, you know, in our time. And he just was a kind of a role model for me. I was 21 at the time, 20 years of age at the time, and I looked at him, and even like Ken was so competitive, you know, and we used to meet up twice a week and play for skins or you know, a sweep, and he would want to win every single time. So, and you had to play well to beat him. And it just brought us on as a team. We had, you know, the likes of Jared Spruill, who was a member here. He had won 2 boys championships, famously beat Pádraig Harrington in one of the finals. Previous to that, we had Francis Howley, who had turned professional and since went on to the European Tour, and now is the pro in Portmarnock. So we had a scattering of kind of guys, but Ken kind of glued us together, and in 1995, we won the Barton Shield. And in 1996, we won the double. So we won the Senior Cup, which is the blue ribbon event, along with the Barton Shield. And it was the first time that the Barton Shield had been won by a club in west of the Shannon, in Connacht, in our province. So that was a huge thing. And then the following year, we won both again. So we won the Barton Shield and the Senior Cup again. And it's really hard to do this. Double. And actually, we would have done, we lost the Senior Cup in 95 on the 19th hole in the deciding game. And other than that, it would have been a triple double, so to speak. So we won 5 out of the 6 in those 2 years alone. So we won the Barton Shield 3 years in a row. We won the Senior Cup 2 years in a row. And then we went on to win again. A few years later, we won a Barton Shield at a Senior Cup again. So it was just really strong ethos, good friends, and really good golfers, you know. And so that was, there were fantastic times, and we were fortunate enough that we always had a strong youth kind of development in the club, and we always had young guys coming up, fighting for Irish boys positions, and in our case, we had, you know, Sean McTiernan and Martin McTiernan, who 2 boys who played for the Irish boys team as well. So we always had progression. If we lost a player, we always gained a young player. So there were great times, yeah, for sure.
Must have been some, as a community-based club, really, you know, in the centre of the community. Must have been some party when you got back.
Well, we won the first one.
Yeah,
Shane, there was bonfires in the village. Jesus. As we came in. You know, we were paraded. We were in the back of an open top lorry. It was incredible. So it really was, and the whole village came out and supported us. It's from a small enough village and area, so it just meant so much to everybody. The golf club is right in the middle of our village, so it is everything to us.
Yeah, well, look, I guess specifically, obviously, we covered the brief history of the West of Ireland Championship with Tony Cunningham in the last episode. The West obviously heralds the beginning of the Amateur Championship season in Ireland. It's obviously hosted at Ross's Point. I suspect you played in a few.
Yeah. I think I played my first one when I was 16.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, so that's not today or yesterday. So it was always, the West for a local is always quite difficult because you want to do so well in it. And then in the back of your head, you're saying you should do well in it because you know the golf course so well. You have such an advantage. But then there's that kind of expectation.
Yeah.
And so it's always difficult for a local. It's the same as any Lahinch player maybe would say down in the south, or Portrush player in the north. You just want to do so well. So I probably played my first one when I was 16. I definitely played over 20 of them. The best year I had was in 95. I got to the semi-finals.
Okay.
And that was a great run. I got through the first couple of matches on 19th and the 20th, I remember. And once you get a good start and kind of you squeeze through a couple of tie-hole matches, eventually lost to Eamon Brady, who's the pro in Clontarf now, who was a fabulous player at his time. Lost to Eamon in the semi-finals, and the Eamon went on to win it that year, and he beat Gary Murphy in the final. Again, Gary went on to European Tour success. So we've been very fortunate in the West over the years that the really, really top players win it. We don't get a lucky winner. We don't get, we have a celebration dinner today of the champions, and we've the likes of Des Smith. We've the winners roll call would be Rory McIlroy, Pádraig Harrington. They've all won it. And we've been very fortunate that the competition and the golf course brings out such unbelievable winners. Did
you lock horns with anybody particularly interesting for the benefit of listeners?
Yeah, in the West, not really. No, nothing too earth-shattering or memorable. Like my one of my favorite memories is I went out to watch. Rory won the West when he was 14, I think. 14 and 15, I think it was. And I went out to watch him the first time. And I heard about this kid who was just, a different level. And I just wanted to see him, see what he was like and see what the hype was all about. And he played, I think, 25 holes that day. He beat two guys on I think, the 12th and 13th. And I never saw him pitch in the 25 holes. Wow. He had every green, he had every par 5 and 2. He hit the ball unbelievably well. The sound of the club face was incredible. And to see this guy, and he just was just different levels. So that was probably one of my favorite. That and probably back in the day, Garth McGimpsey was a joy to watch. Best amateur in modern day in Ireland for sure, and he was fantastic around the West. He had a low penetrating draw, and he was a joy to watch as well. So.
Just as an aside for a second, and I'm sure you know this story, around about the same time as Rory was backing up consecutive West titles, he went out and shot the course record at Portrush, and I had a mate of mine who's no longer with us, unfortunately, watching him. And he had a pretty sedate front line. I think he was 3 under or something like that, or 4 under, 3 under, I think. And he turns to his caddy, who was a pal of his, and he goes, "It's time for fireworks." And I think he shot 8 under in the back 9 to shoot 61 around the little house. I mean, just the abandon of youth. And if he could just bottle that again, I think maybe his bounce has gone a little bit, but he's too good not to come back.
Yeah. No, he was.
Listen, in terms of your education and career, just briefly, you did a business and finance degree in the Ulster University. I'm assuming that was in Coleraine?
It was up in Coleraine, yeah. Yeah, they had, it was never really my plan, per se, to go up there, but they had started an RNA golf bursary at the time. And back in that time, it was free education up, third level education up north. So the attraction of free education, a golf bursary, and membership of Royal Portrush was enough to send me up north. I was very, very happy to go up there, and it was just glorious because I remember when I signed up first, and you have all these different clubs to sign up to as a fresher, and I met a good friend of mine, Ian Dalzell, who's a pro over in the States now, and he was in charge of the golf setup, and he said, "Yeah, it'll be £65 for the year. Actually, it's more than a year." He said it's from September till next December, so it's kind of 15 months, and you get 5-day membership on the Dunluce course, and you get 7-day membership on the Valley.
I could use an expletive here, but I won't.
So where do I sign? And so it was just fantastic to go from Ross's Point and to spend my next few years playing matches in Portrush was just phenomenal, and
It's amazing. I mean, that 6 mile stretch of coastline, as the crow flies, is just extraordinary in terms of density of you've Castle Rock, you've got the band course at Castle Rock as well. You've Port Stewart, you've 54 at Port Stewart. Obviously, the Strand course been the pinnacle of that, and you have the 2 courses at Port Rush. I mean, Jesus, you probably were in a state of ecstasy, I'd imagine, for a couple of years.
Yeah, I know it was fabulous. Like I lived in Port Stewart, played a little bit in Port Stewart, as I had friends there, but our main time was in Port Rush. And it was just so enjoyable. We played the Valley course a lot because it was in just fantastic condition. Greens were normally in better nick, and you could get around quicker, and it was actually a more fun place to play for a 4-ball. So it was, it's a terrific part of the world. And when the Open was up there, it was just so exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of a Mexican like yourself, how was the wee North? I mean, just for listeners not from Northern Ireland or from the South, maybe, that reference is a reference to the Republic being south of the border.
Yeah, it was funny at that time. There was a lot of guys from the South were going up north for their studies. A lot of guys in the border counties, and in Sligo alone, I remember there was 2 buses every Friday direct to Sligo. So there was a strong contingent of Mexicans up there. So
I'm not surprised that they were giving away 5-day membership at 65 quid a head for 15 months.
Yeah.
I'd say there was quite a queue.
And it was fabulous. There was no, people think about the troubles and stuff, and I never saw any trouble at all throughout my 4 years in college, and nobody ever said, "Where are you from?" or there was nothing like that. Yeah. So to me, it is a glorious part of the world, and I still go back up there, and good friends up there.
No, they're great people. I was fortunate to spend 2.5 years in Belfast, and other than occasionally getting mistaken for a tourist, which can happen, you just try and put on a northern accent or an effective Northern Irish accent, which I can do. I can do both the Hardshire one and the Belfast schoolboy, so it's not too bad. I won't try it now. Listen, you obviously went on to a banking career, ACC in Dublin, Ulster Bank and Certis in Sligo. While you were in Dublin, I think you were you joined my own club, Royal Dublin.
I did.
I'm assuming you played a bit of senior cup for listeners in Australia. That's the senior pennant. And from a timing perspective, I think that would have been before and during the initial Martin Hawtrey revisions. Do you have any particular memories of the links at Dollymount?
Yeah, I think it was mainly before, Shane, because I was in I was a member of Royal Dublin and Elm Park before that. But okay. I just really enjoyed Royal Dublin, to be honest with you. It was I always found it suited my eye. I hit the ball left to right. It just on the way out there was a few tee shots that I always favoured, a kind of left to right tee shot. it was always challenging. You know, depending on the prevailing wind, you know, you knew you either had to shoot your score on the way out and try and hold it on the way back, or generally vice versa. And I enjoyed the links, and I think the changes were more afterwards. To be honest with you, so yeah, I think my knowledge of it post the changes wouldn't be as good.
Well, needless to say, you're always welcome, and I do insist when you're next down, you're my guest.
Thanks.
Listen, as I mentioned there, you subsequently returned to Sligo, as you mentioned earlier on, with both Ulster Bank and Certis, until a twist of fate saw an unexpected volte-face from the rough and tumble world of banking. You seem to be undeterred, but you grasped an unexpected nettle. What can you tell us about this period?
Yeah, it was. I had forged a career in financial services and in banking, and I moved back to Sligo. I was with Ulster Bank at the time, and I'd started to see my future back in Sligo, and all was going rosy. And then at the time, we moved on in terms of career path to Bank of Scotland and this company called Certis. And they decided to leave the country and as an operation. So we made redundant, and I was faced with the opportunity or the decision whether to go back to Dublin and continue in my banking career, or to do something different. And I always fancied, I don't know what it was, I always fancied having a kind of a restaurant, food, kind of drinks business. And that's what I kind of pursued. I was fortunate; my wife was supportive of it, and I decided to go down to Ballymaloe Cookery School, which is a famous cookery school down in Cork, run by Doreen Allen and Rachel Allen. I did a 12-week course down there, which was an amazing experience. And really, I did it just to see if I liked it and whether I wanted to pursue my next kind of phase of my career in the food industry, and loved it, and started from there and opened my first restaurant in Sligo, and now I'm still at it 8-9 years later and 2 restaurants later. Still a little bit grey at the sides, as you can see. A little bit stressful, to be honest with you. It doesn't probably pay as well as my old banking world, but it is very fulfilling, and it is really enjoyable. And you're a little bit more flexible in terms of getting a game of golf in the morning before you have to go into work at night time, and there's ways and means of working around it, so it's good.
You know, it's funny that Ballymaloe residential course that Doreen and Rachel run really seems at times to literally change people's lives, because you're not the only person that I know that has gone on to greatness, be it in the kitchen, be it in terms of, a catering business or restaurant business. So listen, before we lose the listeners completely, or they get lost they get stuck in their fridges, we better get back to golf. Yeah. So the big course at Ross's Point, as we said, you're the liaison on the course development side with Mackenzie and Ebert. You might give us, and obviously recently the members voted unanimously to accept and to approve the development proposals that Mackenzie and Ebert have developed over the last week while. You might provide us with some background for the desire for council and the wider membership to develop a course master plan in the first place. Yeah,
we're quite fortunate. I sit on the management council, which sits above kind of the men's club and the ladies' club, and we're fortunate enough. We're very forward-thinking council at present, and like what you might have said earlier, Shane, the focus on that council is the golf course, and we acknowledge the importance of the golf course first and foremost. And we, over the years, changes had been made to the Colt course, and most recently, Pat Ruddy had probably a 10-year tenure in terms of lengthening and kind of making a number of changes to the golf course. So Pat Ruddy had his 10-year period, and we kind of come to the point where we felt we needed to just look at what we had post those changes and get a fresh set of eyes on the golf course, and really have somebody to look at it and say, like, do we have a classic Colt design, or what have we got? Because sometimes changes can be made and you kind of lose your identity a little bit. So we were very fortunate then that we were able to make contact with. We decided then that Mackenzie Ebert were the best fit for us, and we engaged with them and really gave them a kind of an open book to let them look at the golf course and see what they thought of it, and and then we develop a plan after that. So we just wanted to get their thoughts first and foremost, and then we decided we needed to get a master plan following that. So that was really where it was at. We were fortunate then that Martin Ebert came to visit, and Tom Mackenzie both came to visit. And neither had seen the golf course before. So there were like really fresh set of eyes on the course, which was fantastic. I walked with both of them. I walked with Martin Ebert when he visited. And it was probably one of the most enjoyable kind of 3 hours I've spent on the golf course. Just talking to him about golf, talking about the shaping of the holes, and everything, with a fresh set of eyes. So he was seeing things that, maybe as a guy who's grown up on the golf course, I never really noticed, or, I took it for granted that that's the way it always has been. Martin wasn't looking at the golf course on the basis of whoever did whatever change. He was just looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. And that was really, really refreshing. And from that, essentially the council had decided we needed to get a master plan in place to try and to clean up the golf course in some regards. We had a few things that we wanted to focus in on. The bunkering was one, where we wanted a more consistent approach to our bunkering, and a bit of refinement around the greens. Really was where it was at. To review the health and safety issues, if there was any, and really to see where we could take the golf course going forward. But it wasn't to make the golf course longer. It wasn't to make the golf course more difficult. And in some ways, it was to make it more playable. And that was the kind of the brief that we gave them. And that's what they essentially came up with after a number of visits. And so they came up with, a more consistent approach to the bunkering. For instance, would be rough-edged bunkers on the fairway and keep with the revetted bunkers greenside. And that was something that they had done in Turnberry, and it worked very well. And it worked for us because we had revetted bunkers around the greens anyway. And, it was going to reduce any outlay in terms of costs, in terms of fixing everything up. They also proposed a reduction of bunkers. And essentially, like Martin even noticed, I'd say, between first and second visit, bunkers that weren't in play, that were just sitting there, that had no use. Nobody was ever in them. And he said, there's no need for these bunkers, So taking out bunkers and then enhancing the greens and the kind of shaping around the greens, the runoffs. And that would be a lot of to do with the plan going forward. So it was a very fair plan that they put together, and it had to go to the members. Like every golf club, we are run by our constitution. So any changes to the tees, bunkers, or greens would have to go to the members. And after, I would nearly call it a campaign where you're getting people on side, you're showing them the plans and everything. It went to the members there a number of weeks ago, and Martin Ebert presented the plans that night, and they were unanimously passed. We didn't have one naysayer, and it was one of the most positive nights in our golf club. I have to say. The air of positivity afterwards was incredible. It was like we'd won an All Ireland or something, and it's rare for that to happen, like, as being on the, being involved in the project, you're nervous as to, how this thing will go. But Martin delivered it really, really well. Listened to any question. He listened, and he gave a thoughtful response to. And I think people really, really enjoyed Martin talking about the golf course, talking about Colton, the history of it, and educating a lot of the members, most of which probably knew nothing about the golf course, and just to hear somebody with Martin's experience to talk about the routing of that Harry Colt did on the golf course. And it just made people just listen. And I would say there's greater appreciation for what we have following that.
I mean, it's laudable. I must say the cult heritage, certainly in terms of links, design, and revision generally of some of the great links courses, including Royal Dublin. It's a real unique selling point. And I guess as the years pass and people become more cognizant of the strategic golf approach of the Golden Age architects, it's really re-embracing that, as opposed to, if you look at, ever since Sandhills was built in the mid-90s by Cork Crenshaw, there really has been a move back towards, in many ways, back to the future. And an understanding that long, hard, tough championship per se is, it may be for 1 or 2 weeks a year, and for the other 50 weeks of the year, it's the members picking up the tab in terms of making the course more difficult. It's actually making arguably their experience less, not as good, if you like, because it's like a dose of sadomasochism every time you go out.
Yeah.
When you look back over the experience so far with M&E, and obviously the engagement process with the members, I guess, first of all, have you enjoyed the experience? And secondly, has anything in particular surprised you in relation to the way you view the game or the way you view design?
Yeah, well, so far it's been a really positive experience, Shane, to be honest, because I look forward to any visit that Martin is coming, or when Tom visited. It's always an enjoyable. It's never onerous for a start. It was nerve-wracking, definitely, prior to going to the vote to the members, because you never know what members will think. You just did not know, even though everyone was saying it was great and I'm behind you. You don't really know until it comes to that.
You mean you didn't believe your friends and your fellow members?
I could not.
Lack of trust.
No, it's been a very positive thing, and now the next stage is to put a program together, and to try and tackle these things, as quick as we can. For the first time in our lives, the club can afford to do a bit of work ahead of their time. So, it's been really, really positive. I think what Martin really opened my eyes to was, and as he was looking at our golf course with a fresh set of eyes, he noticed things that had been done by the shapers back in the day, 100 years ago, and felt one or two of the things weren't finished off as well as they should have been, So as a member, I looked at it as, oh, well, that's the golf course. That's taken as read. He was kind of going, that's not really, that doesn't look natural.
Sure.
Part of their remit is that it should look natural. And he was dead right in terms of that. So I now look at things always now. Does it look natural? And so that is the thing that is kind of, and previous to that, I probably wouldn't have, thought of it as much. But since walking around with Martin and looking at the way he viewed the golf course and how it should look natural, I fully get it now, and I kind of, I look through those kind of lenses now.
When I was thinking after playing the course last week, I was just thinking about the strengths of the course and why I liked it so much. And obviously the Coat and Co association is very compelling. But I think it's the variety, the routing is the kicker. Obviously, we spoke about this last week. Never heading in the same direction more than twice. The ebb and flow, the compression and release through the journey across the links, and the reveals, I suppose, are the release, and the compression is before you actually change direction and you up and down dale. And obviously, you do when you turn for home on the 12th and you make that exhilarating run from home along the beach. It's here where the pulse quickens as you start to prepare yourself for the muscular climb back up from whence you came. You know, what comes down must go back up. And just the anticipation for that bloody 17th. Niall, obviously, who played with me, didn't know the 17th. And I was trying to point out, sort of alluding to the fact that we got to go back up.
Yeah.
That must be it's, look, I managed to scramble a 5 out of it, but I can imagine that's a card wrecker.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's not even a bunker on the hole, so it's amazing. Like most holes, you might think there's if you think is there out of bounds? No. Is there a river or a lake? No. Is there a bunker? No. But it is absolutely a card wrecker, and as you say, the change in elevation from 5 from your 5th tee shot down is something that you don't see too often. And I know Martin was, when he looked at it, he thought, there was similarities maybe with Gullen or something, but I haven't seen kind of a course that has that change in elevation. And it was very clever from Colt how he was able to get it back up, because we had to get back up to play the 18th. And that 17th is how we get back up that hill. So it was very, very clever, very clever routing.
Well, they do call him, he's renowned as the master router in many ways. If maybe we take a look at the implementation and the construction process, which is to come, I think you're looking to roll out the program over the next 5 years or so in an iterative manner. Would that be the case?
Yeah, it would be. Probably starting this October. All construction work will be done by a third-party contractor, and the rest will be done by the green staff in terms of maybe some of the bunkering, or most of the bunkering. There's a couple of greens. Part of the plan would be a change to the 3rd green, 5th green, 10th green, and a new green on 12. Now, some of those are greens, are reductions in sizes, so we wouldn't require a full resodding or anything like that. So we'd like to get a couple of those jobs done this year, and I would say it's probably realistic that it would be a 5-year period in term, allowing for, if we were to host an event or something that may delay some of that work. If we take a period that we're not hosting anything or anything major, we might get a clean run at it. But certainly if we were ever fortunate to host a big event, it may delay some of that work, which would require 12, 18 month period to settle in.
Obviously, one of the challenges that County Sligo have been dealing with over the last number of years is the North Atlantic, and that stretch beside the 16th tee and sort of up and down the beach there. She's pretty uncompromising in terms of eating away at the periphery of the golf course.
Yeah, it was a worrying time, Shane, for us, and it was around COVID time. 2-3 years ago, we had a very bad storm and took away a lot of the dune protection, and we needed to do corrective work immediately. Some rock armour had to go in, and it was actually a really, again, I was on that project as well, where we had to raise money. We didn't have funds in the account, and we went to the members and created a kind of an investment coupon, so to speak, a 10-year loan. We went to the members and we raised 750 grand in a week.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like, it just showed, the support that the members had for the project. And in 1 week we raised 750 grand, and that money was used for the rock armour, which then was put in place. to try and protect that hole on 16 and on 15. And so it's an ongoing. You're seeing it in other golf courses over in Scotland where there's problems. And part of our plan, we had to make a contingency plan if something happened to our par 3 16th. And part of that master plan is a contingent extra par 3 hole. And we hope we never have to introduce it, but, these plans have to be made just in case. But Mother Nature is changing all the time. We look at the beach and how the sand is being deposited. And in certain areas in the beach, it's moving back the other way. So, the composition of that beach is changing all the time. So who knows? We might be sound for another 100 years.
Yeah, maybe we should set up a collective of links golf courses, particularly in Ireland anyway, or on the island of Ireland. I mean, I spent some time recording with a geologist from Holland, and needless to say, they have an ongoing situation with the North Sea, and they've actually developed a scenario which they call the sand motor, or the sand motor. So essentially, they dredge sand from offshore, and they pump it onto the beach and create. So they're basically engineering the coast. And when you think how central and important the Irish links golf courses are to inbound tourism in Ireland, doing nothing and not supporting and I appreciate there's environmental and ecological concerns in relation to that, but to my mind, and I would say that given the fact that I'm a golfer, where there's a will, there's a way, and if it's that bloody important, we got to do something, and not leave it up to. I mean, I even see. I live in Portmarnock, so I go regularly down the beach, and obviously the Jameson Links and Old Course in Portmarnock are just over the dune ridge. But even over the last 2 years, the amount of sand and, I mean, the sea is eating the dunes, and you can see it. The beach is changing, and if we do nothing and leave it up to clubs to sort thing, I mean, Portmarnock obviously put a shitload of more rock armour in. It's leaving it and doing nothing just isn't an option.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult one, Shane, because we went ahead and did that rock armour, regardless. We just had to get it done. If we were waiting for a local authority or we were looking for assistance anywhere else, we wouldn't get it. It just doesn't exist, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way the mindset is at the moment. And I don't even know. I don't think we can even dredge. Not even allowed to do that in Ireland at the moment. Isn't that right?
I think so.
But
you've seen, obviously, you've seen. I mean, you've seen Montrose on the west east coast of Scotland. That's materially changed since I was there a couple of years ago. And North Berwick are losing bits of tees and stuff like that. Look, it's in the wider scheme of things. Is it important? Probably not, but it's important to us, and it's important to the local economy. And if it's gone, it's gone. You can't get it back. Well, listen, as a foodie and a chef, I'm just wondering what similarities you see with the process the course architects such as M&E undertake, and the culinary ones which you're particularly familiar with.
Well, it comes to mind when you could try and link the two is you don't mess with the classics. Your classic dish, your classic golf course, and we really shouldn't be messing with either of them. And you've seen it in a classic dish, and somebody's trying to put a spin on it and trying to introduce new flavors onto it. It's like somebody going to a classic golf course and trying to mess around with it. So I think they're very similar in terms of respecting what the classics are and keeping them.
Yeah, and I guess that very much speaks to sense of place and being true to what you are, as opposed to, as you say, trying to reinvent what you are. Because ultimately, in the reinvention, and look, over time, evolution is different to reinvention. Reinvention is trying to be something else, and it's actually being comfortable in your own skin. And I think County Sligo Golf Club know exactly who they are and where they're going. So that's great.
Yeah. I think it's like, if you look back, Shane, like there's so many golf courses back 10, 20 years ago that went through a period of, we have to make this longer, we have to make it more challenging. How dare they shoot 68? Or we can't have, somebody shooting 66, or, there seemed to be just that general swell. You've seen it all over the country where golf courses were strengthened, so to speak, and thankfully, I think that period has relented, and we're now in a situation where, like we are in County Sligo, we're just trying to make it more enjoyable to play, and there is nothing wrong with that. Colt designed the golf course with the handicap golfer in mind as well. So you had choices to make. You had bailouts on each side of the green. You could take on the pin, or there would be a bailout, and we appreciate what he was trying to do, and that's what Martin Ebert and Tom McKenzie are trying to do too. And you alluded to it earlier. It's all about making it more enjoyable. We're trying to get more people to play the game. So why would you make the golf course an unenjoyable experience? It doesn't make
Absolutely. Listen, I've been listening to the Australian Golf Passport podcast over the last couple of years, and the hosts Matt Mollick and Scott Warren have coined I'm sure they were using it before the podcast came on stream, but the 4-word course review. Okay, so I'm going to steal that particular concept for the purpose of this chat. I've come up with 3 with regard to County Sligo that I've been playing around with. So the first one is spiritual elegance, enchanting walk. The second one is draped over embroidered cloth. That is a reference to W.B. Yeats, obviously, who's centrally linked to the Sligo area. Technically, my last one is 5 words, but I beg your forgiveness as I've hyphenated the name of Sligo's version of Table Mountain. Obviously, Ben Bulben, which lurks forebodingly above the course. So monolithic Ben Bulben looms large. What do you think?
That's impressive. That is impressive, Shane. Yeah. No, and all the fair points, and the only one I would add to it, and I'm not as eloquent as you, is it's as you see it. So they were my 4 words, and I think when your friend was playing as well, I think that County Sligo is all in front of you, and we don't have too many blind shots, if any, and it's a kind of like the links course I like to play. So I go with as you see it as my 4 words.
Happy days. Yeah. I'll accept that gratefully. Listen,
it's a weak effort, but
No, that works. That works. Listen, as you know, I've just returned from a trip down to your neck of the woods, which encompassed 96 holes at Sligo, Strandhill, Enniscrone, and Cairn. For listeners who are interested, you might provide us with an elevator pitch for golf and associated pursuits in counties Mayo and Sligo.
Yeah, I think it's certainly. I still feel it's kind of an untapped area for a lot of American golfers. The quality of the golf courses are phenomenal. In terms of Cairn and Enniscrone, you have that rugged seaside links feel that you probably can't replicate too much in other countries. And then you have the kind of quality classic links of Ross's Point and maybe Rossapenope and Donegal. So there is so much great golf to be played up in this area. We have the benefit here in Ross's Point, and we have both mountains and the sea, and it's rare enough you have a combination of two. So we have a lot of adventure visitors that come surfing. We have a lot of country walks and all that kind of area. So it's a beautiful place to visit. And, a lot of your typical American tourist will go down and play the Ballybunions or the Hinches, and they're fine golf courses, but I would be suggesting to them all to move a little bit north and come up Sligo, Mayo, Donegal. It's going to be a huge growth area in the next few years, no doubt about it.
So get there while it's still somewhat relatively not quite as busy as you'd like it, but
it's not as busy. Yeah, it's not as busy, Shane, and you get more favourable tee times. it definitely isn't as busy as the courses down south, and you have an untapped market in terms of restaurants and hotels.
And just to clarify, I mean, obviously, I know that Ballybunion their tee sheet is pretty much closed for this year. Portmarnock's is closed, Royal Portrush is closed, Royal County Down is closed, Lahinch's is closed. There's availability in County Sligo this year?
There is, yeah. Okay. We have seen a huge growth in the last 2 years, since COVID really, and that's been brought on by the fact, Shane, that the post-COVID, the courses down south were all closed because of the deferral of holidays, and it's just been phenomenal, and the feedback we've got from anyone who's visited, they've been blown away by it. So there's still availability, and over the next couple of years, it's going to be a busy period with the Open coming back to Portrush, the Ryder Cup coming to Adair. So I would definitely be penciling in Sligo, Donegal, Mayo as your next holiday destination.
100%. So the moral of that story is, what are you waiting for? I'm revisiting Donegal. I've just organised a couple of days up in Rossapena since we last spoke. So looking forward to that next month. But look, as regular listeners know, I always conclude the show with the same 2 questions. So here goes. The penultimate one requires you to provide us with at least 5 bucket list courses that you either haven't played and want to, or alternatively have played and want to return to. Over to you.
Yeah, I went with course that I haven't played because
it's cool.
Because there's too many that I haven't played. And number 5 I'd have is Waterville, and I'm embarrassed to say that I've never made it down to Waterville. So from a geographical point of view, Sligo is in the northwest, and Waterville is probably the most southerly tipped golf course. It's been always on my bucket list to go, and I haven't just made it down there yet. So that's definitely, of all the courses in Ireland, Waterville is the one that I haven't played and will be on the list. And the rest are all American classic golf courses that, would be not, I'd say it's on everybody's list, to be honest, but I still would love to play Augusta, Cypress Point, Pine Valley, the 3 kind of American classics. And I've thrown in Shinnecock Hills as a 4th because my old friend Sean Quinlivan from Ballybunion is the professional there, and I played a lot of golf with him when I was young, and so they would be my 5 courses. But that would be it. Yeah.
They'll do. So needless to say, if there's any listeners from any of those courses that want to extend an invite to David Dunne, please, you can contact me and I'll CC him, and you can invite me too. But I believe, obviously, that the first one you selected there, it's not the Dunne thing to be asking for invites to Augusta. So that just comes to you if it's going to come to you. So listen, obviously, part of the reason we're talking today is associated with my commencing the purchase of architectural and historical books post-COVID and post going down to Australia in January 2020, which is slowly dragging me down the particular rabbit hole that I find myself in. For any golfer looking to augment their golfing libraries, what 2 golf books would you recommend? Yeah,
I'm not an avid golf history book reader, if that makes sense. And I'm sorry that I'm nothing architecturally, but one of the most enjoyable reads I had, and I read it, must have been 20 years ago, was 4 Iron in the Soul by Lawrence Donegan.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I have.
Oh, jeez. He goes caddying for Ross Drummond on the European Tour. And Lawrence Donegan is a well-known journalist, and he has his mechanical
well-known curmudgeon as well, actually. He's growing old gracefully and turning into John Huggan.
Yeah. But I have to say, I always enjoyed his listen. But I think in the youth he might have been in a band. I think he was in Shawadi Wadi, was he? I think he was in something. He was in.
He was. Yeah, I can't quite remember.
But anyway,
not a million miles away.
I just really enjoyed it as a young guy reading it. He goes on tour, caddies for Ross Drummond, and it was a really funny period in the summer that he caddied for him. And the other one, I suppose, is an old classic as well, is A Good Walk Spoiled by John Feinstein. Both books that resonated with me, and I still remember some of them, and they're probably the two that came straight to mind.
Perfect. Well, listen, thank you. Listen, I'm out of questions, David. All that's left is actually not quite all that's left, but is to thank you for your time and leave you and the listeners with a little philosophical thought experiment that really messed with my head. It's probably sort of quite germane to the process that's ongoing at County Sligo and other places around the place. So credit and thanks must first be extended to Thomas Dunne, who, if my memory serves, and it's the same Tom Dunne, he's actually the other side of the McKellar Journal, obviously Lawrence Donegan being the other 50%, who posted most of the following on the Golf Club Atlas discussion board recently. So first of all, you're sitting down, so that's good. Second of all, so the concept is known as the ship of Theseus paradox and explores identity and change through time. It was first posited by Plutarch, a Greek historian and philosopher, some 2,000 years ago. So this may make your head hurt, so be warned. So stick with me here. It's actually quite rewarding. It may go round and round and round in your head, though. In Greek mythology, the Athenians would make an annual seafaring pilgrimage to commemorate Theseus' slaying of the Minotaur and rescue of the city's children. As the decades passed, the Athenians naturally had to replace various aging components of the ship until all of the original ones were gone, thus prompting this thought experiment. One resolution puts forth the concept of continued identity, in that if the process is gradual enough, the community would still recognize the ship in a way they would likely not if it was rebuilt all in one go. Lots of interesting variants and corollaries naturally stem from this. For example, the human body itself can be considered a ship of Theseus. As our cells die and regenerate, in the literal sense, we become new people over the course of our lifetimes, and yet we're still ourselves. So maybe there is more to identity than physical components. Centuries later, the philosopher Thomas Hobbes extended the problem of the ship by wondering if some people stood next to the ship and gathered up all of the discarded original pieces to conduct a faithful rebuild later on, would that still be Theseus' ship? I suppose in golfing terms, this is akin to the evolution of golf courses through time. I leave you and the listeners to connect the dots in whatever way you wish. I suppose personally, having given this analogy some significant thought over the last couple of weeks, and through the prism of golf, I suspect it relates to whether any of the aforementioned Golden Age architects would recognize any of their portfolio of courses as natural evolutions related to the original conceptualizations back in the 1900s, 10s or 20s. In many cases, I think they just might. It's perhaps interesting to think how they could or would have continued to nip and tuck and polish these places had the Depression, World War II and mortality not ultimately intervened. On that note, once again, many thanks to your time today. It was a real pleasure to chat. I really look forward to returning to the shores of Drumcliff Bay to rekindle the many great memories that I hold closely of the links at Ross's Point. Go easy. Just before we sign off, I have a wee little favour to ask. If you're enjoying the show, it would be great if you could give it a star rating and maybe even a written review on your particular podcast platform of choice. It really makes a difference and would be very much appreciated. Many thanks for considering the request. Until the next time, happy golfing.